was just finishing my shift when he asks if I felt like going for a few drinks. He wasn't a complete stranger, and the other staff knew him, so I agreed. We went to a cocktail bar nearby, and then he suggested going to his for a few drinks. He had a bar in his house. My first mistake was agreeing, but when I was 19, I was just happy to go along with things. Anyway, all's going good. We're getting along fine and having a good night. But the more he drank, things began to change. He was telling me horrific stories about things he'd seen while surfing. Through the night, the look in his eyes began to change. I suppose it sounds cliche, but there's no other way to describe it. He had a bit of madness in them, which he previously didn't have. He was giving me loads of drinks and started offering to buy me drugs. I declined. I started to feel uneasy and texted my best friend saying I didn't feel right. He lived around the corner and said if I needed to leave that he'd meet me. I'm timing when I'm going to leave. It's like 5 AM at this point. I was going to be polite, finish my drink, thank him, and head out, meet my friend, then go home. Then he starts talking about killing people and how he would go about it. He tells me that he would meet a girl, get to know her, make her feel comfortable and like he wasn't a threat. Then he'd take her out for drinks and back to his for more and get her really drunk. Something clicked for me at this point. That was exactly what he was doing with me. Except I, thankfully, can handle my drink, so I wasn't drunk. At this point, he looked completely different. Like his face had changed completely. He looked so sinister. He told me about how he'd do the deed. The knife he specifically showed me when we first got to his favourite cooking knife apparently, and how he'd cover the room we were in with plastic so that nothing had evidence on it when he went to work dismembering. When I asked what he'd do with the body parts, he pointed out the oil drum he had in the back garden and smiled smugly. Everything in my body was screaming at me that I needed to leave, so I texted my best friend and literally sprinted out. He cussed me out as I did and slammed the door so hard it shook. My friend held me while I sobbed. I got in at about 6:30 in the morning and blocked him on everything. Story number 2. It was the dead of winter, near midnight, and I was struggling to empty a heavy trash can into a dumpster. I lived in a small town where everything shut down at 8 PM, so seeing people around late at night wasn't impossible, just a little unusual, especially with the shitty cold weather keeping folks indoors. But not me. I was a janitor for a few different businesses, and since I wasn't a morning person, I cleaned at night. The dumpster was about 30 feet behind the building, so I had to tread carefully through the icy parking lot to avoid falling. was nothing back here except me, a dumpster, the hill the dumpster rests up against, which I can't scale, and lots of open, icy areas. And I had left my pepper spray inside my bag. All these facts were hitting me hard in the gut. The guy saw me see him, and he turned, heading back towards the sidewalk, but he seemed low-key pissed. "Hey," he said, me still processing what reason anyone but me could have to be there that late at night. I said, "Hey," he said, now even more pissed. "Hey," I said back, because now I was wondering if I was being standoffish to a dude on a walk. But at the same time, my inner alarm bells were screaming because A, he was holding a sturdy-looking pole that could be used as a weapon. B, he walked back to the paved sidewalk to leave. Why wasn't he on the sidewalk in the first place? Why make a random U-shape around a building with a shitty icy parking lot when the sidewalk is safer and better? And C, I realised as he got closer that he was shorter than me. I don't think he realised how tall I was from a distance. Just innately, I felt as he was walking away that the reason he didn't do anything was because he realised I might have put up more of a fight than he could have handled. I got my ass back inside and locked the doors. I secretly watched him walk away down the sidewalk, and when he was out of sight, I checked out his footpath in the snow. That's when I saw prints next to one of the windows. Instantly, my gut sank. I think he had noticed the lights on in the building and investigated. He probably watched me clean inside for God knows how long before deciding to follow me to the dumpster. It really scared me, I can't lie. Even though nothing had technically happened, I didn't feel safe cleaning at night anymore, so I started cleaning in the mornings. This is not the end of the story. It was years later, when I was checking out the local bulletin board, I saw that guy's fucking face on a wanted danger poster. He had murdered 2 older people, not his grandparents, they were strangers, decapitating them but leaving their dogs alive. He had no real motive other than opportunity. I think back to running into him next to that dumpster and get really nervous, as there was no goddamn way anyone was going to help me. I wonder, if I was a short woman, would I be dead right now? The final kicker. He hasn't been caught. That's right, he is still on the loose somewhere. I think he's got friends, family hiding him somewhere. I don't know how he's managing to survive otherwise. Story number 3. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and my parents had just separated. My mum was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my own room there, but I preferred to sleep in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of a hallway, directly across from each other. I woke up in the middle of the night and remember sitting up in my mum's bed and seeing that our cat was perched in the doorframe of her room. Both doors were open and you could partially see into my bedroom. This was strange because our cat was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he walked into my bedroom and meowed. I turned to face my mum and wake her up. In the 4 seconds it took her to wake up and ask me what was wrong, we both looked back up in the doorframe and there was a man standing by my open door, making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly, but my mum proceeded to pick me up and literally throw me out of the screen window next to the bed. We were on the first floor and it was maybe a 3 feet drop to the ground. to the kitchen and opened up our water heater closet and found a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The police were called again, but all they could do was speculate that the man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. Story number 4. I had a stalker for about 2 years. It started at my first apartment when I was 18. He would do little stuff like stand on my porch and tap on the windows, or walk around my backyard. I called the cops and they checked it out, saying that they didn't see anything. After about 6 months, my boyfriend and I decided to go see a concert out of town. We left our dogs in the basement and hid the key to the house because my brother would come by a few times a day and let the dogs out. When we got home, things started getting weird. At night, we started hearing noises in the attic that was located right above our bedroom. The door to the attic was also in our bedroom, but we never used it. It sounded like footsteps, and the dogs would growl at the door all night. We didn't find out what the noises were until we moved out. We went up there to get our Christmas decorations and saw that someone had broken the brick walls that separated our attic with the empty apartment next door's attic. The other apartment had a bed in the attic and other miscellaneous stuff. We moved into the new house, and nothing happened until we had been there for about 4 months. That's when it got really bad. My underwear started she's in